Welcome to the Make It Matter Challenge. We are absolutely thrilled that you guys are all here. I'm going to give a couple introductory remarks, then hand it over to Alethea to tell you how the next 2 hours are going to go. A little bit about what LinkedIn for Good is and does. So we are in a really unique situation as a company where we can leverage what we do best as a business to the benefit to the social sector. So what LinkedIn does pretty well is to connect talent with opportunity. And we are spending our days and nights figuring out how we can do that in the context of the social sector. And what that literally means is connecting our members with skill-based volunteer opportunities or board positions. And to date, it's worked really well, but we have a huge problem. A huge, maybe surprising problem. We have way too many members that want to volunteer and way too few opportunities. So as of, I think, this morning, there were 2.1 million members who on their profile have signaled that I want to do skill-based volunteering or I want to serve on the board. And I think as of this morning, Allison told me, I think there's about 8,300 opportunities. So that's a big, what we're now calling a volunteer gap. And what's even more concerning is it's growing bigger and bigger every day. So about 8 months ago, when we first, and Taproot has been such an incredible partner to us from the very beginning and thinking about how to leverage our network for good. And when we talked to them about 8 months ago, we actually had only 500 opportunities on the network. So we are trending the right way, but we were talking to them, like, what are ways that we can really, really make some game-changing impact and increase in these opportunities? And we came up with this idea of a challenge. So it is so exciting, fast forward 8 months later, to have you all here and be ready to listen to these really, really extraordinary ideas that are hopefully going to take our 8,000 opportunities to 800,000 opportunities and start meeting the demand of people who want to make a difference in the world. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alethea, who's going to tell you about how the day is going to go. But thank you again for being here.
Thanks, Meg. All right. Thank you, Meg. I'm Alethea Hanneman. I'm director of the product team at Taproot. If you don't know Taproot, we do pro bono. We're all about pro bono, and that's because it's a really high ROI way to bring professional services to nonprofits so that they can achieve their mission. Probably don't need to tell you that. If you're here, you probably believe in pro bono as well. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the challenge and how the day is going to go, and then get right into the meat of the day because we've got some really interesting ideas to talk about. But first, I want to say some thank yous. First of all, to LinkedIn and Reid Hoffman for your support of the challenge. It's just been so, so exciting. And, to have you here judging, to host, everything has been wonderful. So thank you for that. Also to LinkedIn for their support of pro bono just in general. With LinkedIn for Good and the volunteer marketplace, you are helping nonprofits achieve big things every day, and that's huge. Finally, specifically from LinkedIn, Meg and Allison, thank you for making your teams available and making this go so smoothly. To our judges, all of you who are doing this pro bono, and also to our teams who are doing pro bono for pro bono. We're doing a lot of meta bono here today. So thank you all for being here. So about the challenge, as Meg said, it's sort of counterintuitive. There's all these nonprofits who tell us, 90% of nonprofits tell Taproot that they want more pro bono. And you've got these 2.1 million members on LinkedIn saying they want to give pro bono. So what are some of the problems? What are some of the challenges? Well, you're going to hear more about that from each of our teams today because they're all coming at that challenge in different ways. When we kicked off the challenge, we got about 160 entries from all over the country. We've whittled them down to these four. These four we think are the ones that have the most potential. They're the most innovative. They're also the most feasible. And perhaps most importantly, they're going to bring high quality pro bono, not just pro bono, but high quality pro bono, not just more activity. And they have the potential for scale. So as Meg said, they can really be game changers. As soon as we selected these finalists, we also helped them to go through a pretty serious business planning process. So everything you're seeing here today has been, vetted to some extent. And that's something I want to highlight for all of you in the room, that these ideas, in a way, I'd almost call them all winners at this point because they're almost turnkey. They're ready to go. We could kick this off and give it a try. So if you're a funder, if you're a potential partner, I know we've got a lot of those in the room, ask the right questions because these are folks who are really ready to go and ideas that are really ready to go that could make huge changes in the social sector. But that said, they're all winners, but we are going to have some winners today, and we have some judges to help get us there. The winners, each of the two winning teams, so we're going to pick 2 of the 4. Each of the 2 winning teams are going to get $10,000 for the team and then $5,000 for the nonprofit of their choice, as well as some bonus prizes that I'll tell you about a little bit later. But to quickly introduce our judges, first of all, we've got Reid Hoffman, who likely needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyways, just to be even. The executive chairman and co-founder of LinkedIn, as an angel venture investor in companies such as Airbnb, Flickr, and Zynga, and a board member for huge high-impact nonprofits such as DoSomething.org and Kiva. Obviously, the man knows how to scale things and big ideas. So thank you, Reid, for being here today. We also have Liz Hamburg, who's the president and CEO of the Taproot Foundation. So she also knows a little bit about pro bono. Liz was, among other things, in her nonprofit past, she was the founding New York board member of the Women's Initiative for Self-Employment, which helps low-income women begin, start, and grow businesses. So that's just one of the ways that she's looked at entrepreneurship through the years. We also have Patrice Martin, who's the co-lead and creative director of IDEO.org. Many of you probably know IDEO and also the .org part of their organization. They work on innovative solutions for low-income communities in a number of different ways. We also have Perla Nee, who's the founder and former publisher of Stanford Social Innovation Review. I'm sure you have a couple readers in the room. And right now, Perla is working with an organization called GreatNonprofits.org, which helps to get out information about more than 1.2 million nonprofits. So trying to highlight those good nonprofits that are out there. Finally, we've got Dave Viotti, who's with Smallify Innovation Consulting, which works to bring innovative processes to large enterprises and small social ventures. Dave's done a lot with entrepreneurship, including working with the Wesley Prize for Young Innovators in California. And I believe you have a call out right now still, looking for intrapreneurs and entrepreneurs in California. So if you know of someone who might be a nominee for that prize, please look up the Wesley Foundation. Among other things, Dave also helped create design the Civic Accelerator for Points of Light. That's Points of Light's incubator. So we've got a huge, wonderful range of expertise in our judges here today. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We've got 4 teams. They've got 7 minutes a team. So they're going to do 7-minute presentation, and then we're going to do 7 minutes of Q&A. The judges are going to be asking questions. We also wanted to get questions from you in the audience, so we're going to do a text polling. So we'll get to this when we do the first idea, but we'll give you a number. Please keep your phones out. I rarely say that, but please do. You can text your question in, and they'll come up on the screen, and we'll make sure to take a few of those as well. After we get through all 4 teams, then the judges will go and deliberate. They're actually going into a room called the Superman room, which I really like. I'm not allowed in there. Only Supermen are allowed in there. They'll come back. We'll announce the winners, and yeah, then we'll award the prizes. So we're ready to go. Alrighty, so let's get to it. Teams, are you ready? You look ready. I know you're ready because I saw your presentations. And I know the judges are ready. All right, so we're going to start with a team called the Bonafide Consulting Corps. So we got really excited about this idea because it really works to help nonprofits access pro bono from the inside out. So what if there was a well-trained fellow who came to your organization and really helped you to approach the planning and the management process of pro bono? That's what these guys are going to be talking about here today. And they really know about fellowships. They're all former AmeriCorps fellows, and they all work with New York Cares. So they know what they're talking about. So I'd love to welcome the Bonafide Consulting Corps, Robert Cunningham, Heon Park, and Joshua Winata.
So hi everybody, good afternoon. My name is Robert Cunningham, and these are my colleagues, Joshua Winata and Heon Park, and we are the team behind the Bonafide Consulting Corps, which aims to recruit, train, and embed consulting fellows in the nonprofit community to increase its capacity to use high-quality pro bono services.
We all know that nonprofit organizations do want to engage in more pro bono, but a lot of times they don't know where to start. So let's take a website creation project, for example. A lot of times they run into questions as, what do we really know about creating a website, and what do we need to create a website? And who can we engage, and who can actually provide the services? Can we get coders? Can we get developers? Can we get designers? And who will actually, from our team, manage the pro bono project from end to end? So these are the barriers that nonprofits face, and because at nonprofit organizations, staff is already spread so thin, having the know-how and the significant invest time of staff members is a huge barrier to accessing pro bono. And this is the reason that our idea was created to solve this problem.
We believe these challenges at their core can be best addressed through a human resources solution. So the Bonafide Consulting Core leverages human insight, which allows for greater flexibility so that we can really address the infinitely diverse and complex range of needs that nonprofits face every day. Each nonprofit client will have access to a creative individual who will then be able to adapt and respond to the unique demands of that particular nonprofit organization, which we believe will then in turn lead to higher quality and more meaningful pro bono engagements. Our program will embed trained core members in nonprofit organizations for 1 full year to act as management consultants, essentially, to not only identify areas of need, but also help to translate and scope those needs into discrete projects with very clear deliverables. In addition, they'll also be responsible for recruiting pro bono volunteers and determining which skill sets are actually needed for that particular project. And this is something that a lot of nonprofits struggle with, especially for more technical projects, and trying to understand which skill sets are necessary. Again, the website being a great example. In addition, they'll also manage the pro bono project from beginning to end, and they'll provide that layer of accountability to both the volunteer and to the nonprofit to make sure that the project stays on track and is actually completed. And finally, and this is a very critical piece for us, is we want our consulting core member to really work to help sustain this pro bono ethic and to create resources that will equip nonprofits to continue to be able to leverage pro bono resources for years to come. So this might take the form of an onboarding packet for pro bono volunteers. It might take the form of staff training for customized planning documents. And basically our goal is to create a generation of nonprofits and really shift the culture where we have a group of nonprofits who are now able to intelligently utilize pro bono themselves on their own.
And so our ideal fellow is a sharp, smart, enterprising college graduate with 1 or 2 years of project management work under his or her belt, specifically with experience working at building collaborative teams amongst disparate stakeholders, since our fellow will be working as a cross-sector connector. We know that there is interest in this program based on a survey which we created in conjunction with Taproot and circulated in our LinkedIn groups. After a week, we actually had over 80 individuals sign up requesting more information about the program. To really maximize the fellows' potential, they will undergo a rigorous 5-week intensive boot camp during which time they will learn essential business skills, project management skills. They will bond as a cohort, and unfortunately, it will result in a lot of sticky note carnage, as you can see here.
We know that nonprofit demand is out there. Taproot actually helped us survey over 200 nonprofits for this challenge, and almost 80% of them said that they're somewhat likely or very likely to bring on a fellow to leverage and increase their pro bono engagements. We're really looking for nonprofit organizations who are growing, who can really have ample potential to utilize pro bono volunteers to really take their organization and mission to the next step. And we want to focus on areas such as education, youth development, financial empowerment to really increase the impact on the community needs. And we want to make sure that these nonprofits have a proven track record, healthy finances, and are really ready to embrace this consulting core member as one of their own.
We also believe that the Bonafide Consulting Core will be most successful if it's built on cross-sector partnerships that really leverage the strengths that each sector can bring to the table. So first off, government. We believe that the Bonafide Consulting Core should be housed in the Corporation for National and Community Service as an AmeriCorps program. That way it can really benefit from government funding of the core member stipends. And on top of that, there's also an established vehicle for recruitment of potential candidates. Secondly, companies. We'd love to secure sponsorships from corporate foundations who, beyond just granting funding, will also be able to provide high-quality training and also the mentorship of our core members. A great example of this type of partnership actually was announced this past July. The City Foundation recently announced a $10 million commitment to the ServiceWorks program, which is also a similar kind of AmeriCorps service year model. As a further benefit, a lot of companies are also a great source of skilled volunteers, so we can recruit our pro bono volunteers that way. And just in my experience in working with a lot of these corporate volunteer programs, they're looking for pro bono volunteer opportunities as well. So there's a mutual benefit there. And thirdly, we have schools, universities, continuing education programs. They would have a critical role to play in getting the word out to job-seeking graduates, and they're also a natural fit from the training perspective. And then finally, the client nonprofits themselves. They'll be able to provide the training and leadership and mentorship from the public sector, again, trying to build that cross-sector mentality within the core members. And then we'd also love to partner with organizations like Taproot, who have an online marketplace for volunteers, and with organizations like LinkedIn, who also have an online marketplace for volunteers to help recruit those folks as well.
Yeah, and here's some data behind the value that the fellows will add to each nonprofit in which they're placed. So the top row here, we have one fellow's impact over the course of a year. That fellow will work with 2 nonprofits, engage 60 to 80 pro bono volunteers in 20 pro bono projects, resulting in a delivery of service of $120,000. Pilot year 1, we will have a cohort of 20 fellows, and you can just multiply across the rows, which in the end will deliver $2.4 million in pro bono services. Year 5, we would hope to expand to 3 of the 5 cities in which Taproot is located, engaging 280 fellows, ultimately delivering $48 million of pro bono services.
So in summary, Bonafide Consulting Corps will train consulting members to be embedded into nonprofits so they can leverage and really take the help the nonprofits engage in pro bono. We really seek to this human-based approach, human-based approach is really innovative, and we want to make sure that the nonprofits are receiving the catered solutions that they will have after the service year. And as AmeriCorps alums ourselves, we're really a big believer of the service year and the development of future cross-sector leaders, and we really want to take this idea forward with your support. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I think we can all imagine how impactful a AmeriCorps program for pro bono would be. So we're going to talk about the text polling really quick. Here's the deal. Take out your phone. You're going to send the message to 22333, and that number will be the same for all the 4 teams. The number to send in a question for this team in particular, you'll preface your text with 779-612, and then type your question and it'll appear on the screen. But first, we're going to take some questions from the judges, and we'll see what comes up from the audience.
Thanks for a great presentation. I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about the experience for the fellow and what that will be structured like.
So we really want our fellows to be to have a lot of potential, who want to get involved in cross-sector and really promote pro bono. We want this to be, they're going through a rigorous training during the 5-week and be embedded in the nonprofit. They'll do a needs assessment with the nonprofit and help them develop work plans, and also recruit pro bono volunteers. And then they will also see that project end to end. And we really hope that these fellows will be able to bring about 10 projects to the nonprofit, as we mentioned, for a value of $120,000. After this, they will get invaluable experience through the year, and we really hope them to develop into leaders who, whether they are working in the public sector or private sectors, will have experience working in pro bono and really be the ambassadors and will advocate for pro bono for years to come.
Sure. And how are they moving between organizations and details like that?
Great. So we are thinking about having the fellow work with 2 nonprofit organizations, and we want them to work part-time because it is going to be a year-long engagement. So we want them, because they're located in one city, we want to plug them into 2 organizations. So they'll spend half their week in one place and half the week in the other. And then that way they'll be able to leverage their knowledge and then also utilize their experiences and really help one nonprofit communicate with the other as well and sort of share resources that way.
I was just wondering in terms of the impact slide, you mentioned that one project is about 30 volunteers that this one pro bono member would engage. What is a typical project that would engage around 30 volunteers?
That's a great question, Perla. So when we mention 10 projects per fellow, we want to also make the nonprofits break down large projects such as creating the website into digestible and manageable pieces. So if a website is the overarching project, we want to break that into 10. So one might work on branding, one might work on photography, one might work on design, someone might be working on the development piece of the actual website itself. So we expect that each of those will have a team of 3 to 4 pro bono consultants, and then those will, in conjunction, so that's 10 projects, will bring in about, and at each organization will bring about 30 to 40 pro bono consultants working throughout the year for that project. Mm-hmm.
Obviously, one of the good things is having people being able to scope the work. People are also the scale are the limiting factor in scaling. How do you make the onboarding of fellows easier? How do you source them? How do you get benefit from compounding scale? And is it just kind of a question of, well, we eventually end up with a relatively large fellows organization?
We're going to rely a lot on the cohorts and developing our alumni. So as folks graduate from the program, we're hoping that they'll spread the word to their colleagues, to their campuses, and build a cohort that way. And hopefully that will be the multiplier effect.
Staffing that you expect to support that?
So in our pilot year, we hope to be located in one city, so such like New York City or San Francisco, and have about 2 program coordinators work with 20 fellows. So each, during the boot camp phase, of course, we'll bring in a lot of partnerships and support mentors and trainers from that area. But throughout the year, we'll have 2 fellows work and provide support, 2 coordinators provide support for our 20 fellows throughout the year.
What resources the nonprofit will have to provide to the fellows and what that transition process looks like to train the internal staff at the nonprofit.
Absolutely. So nonprofits will have to provide really be ready to embrace the fellow as one of their own, because they will need to be plugged in to make the right decisions and make the right recommendations to the nonprofit. They should also provide a supervisor for the duration of the year, but we really feel that by having someone who's dedicated to engaging pro bono volunteers, that staff resource compared to the staff resource that they would have to spend to engage pro bono volunteers on their own will be far less, and it will be a good investment.
Involved are the staff members in the actual projects?
Mm-hmm. So all the deliverables will still need to come from the organization. Our fellow will work as a project manager to make sure that everyone's on task and on work plan, and they'll serve as a translator between the pro bono volunteers and the organization itself.
I'm going to actually maybe take a question from the audience, if you guys see these. If I can read them without my glasses. So how would you measure success of this program? What at the end of the first year and then maybe the end of 5 years, what are you going to say is a successful program?
That is a great question. To measure success, of course, we want to see an increase in pro bono engagement, and we also want to survey the nonprofit before and after to talk about how did this process actually make it easier. And in order to be considered successful, our actual plan is to make sure that these fellows can work for a year with the nonprofit and leave behind resources that, maybe as Josh mentioned before, an onboarding packet for the nonprofit, so they can continue to engage in pro bono going forward for years to come. So we will also survey the nonprofits and evaluate the nonprofits for the year after and 2 years after to make sure to see how much to how far they have actually engaged pro bonos even beyond the service fellow.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the profile of what's an ideal customer or an ideal nonprofit to get started with? And then also just, I see the big plans for scale. What would you actually do on Monday to get started?
Nonprofits, we definitely want to work with growing nonprofits because we feel like there's a big impact there. And then they have a lot of ways for people to plug in pro bono resources. But we also want to make sure they're clear on mission. in order to start, I guess, on Monday is we need to start designing an application process. So we want to provide a pretty clear application process to make sure that we assess the readiness of nonprofit to accept the fellow in there. And then we'll work with our partners to really get the word out and start doing marketing to design a project and actually bring in people. And we would love to get pro bono volunteers to help us with that as well.
Okay. And on the revenue model itself, I think you talked about government and corporate funding. Have you looked at other sources of revenue, other earned income models? And like, for example, have you thought about the nonprofit actually having a little skin in the game and investing too?
That is a good question. During the short amount of time that we had to prepare for this project, we did consider other revenues. We found that this is the most viable one to provide because there is a significant starting up cost for our program. But we do agree that it would be great if nonprofits after the pilot year, if we can prove that this is a successful model, we do want the nonprofits to have the skin in the game because that actually encourages them to be a little more invested, so they can really leverage that and get the value out of it and continue and make sure that the projects and the fellows have a successful year.
We actually did get to take a few questions, I think, from the board. So thank you for all those good submissions. And I would say we'll have some mingling time both when the judges are deliberating and then after the event. And I would encourage you guys to keep asking those questions because there's both questions and ideas in here.
The questions that are being submitted are good.
Yeah, no, they're excellent. They're really good ones. But thank you guys. That was excellent.
Thank you for the opportunity.
That was awesome. All right, we're going to move to our next team, which is called crowdfunding for pro bono. So this is a totally new idea, at least new to us, because it brings together the funding that organizations need sometimes to sustain pro bono in a way that's going to help them keep doing it rather than just off the side of their desk, which doesn't always work. So to really manage pro bono successfully, you have to have that investment. So this team is bringing together that financial investment and that fundraising with the resource raising, with getting the people in to actually do the pro bono. So it's crowdfunding for pro bono. It's a team of two. These folks are also from New York City. Jonathan Chen is in digital marketing for Condé Nast, and he's actually a Taproot pro bono consultant, so we love him in all sorts of ways. He's been helping us with our AdWords strategy, which is great. And Brian Hansen holds a global management position in product strategy at Intralinks, which is a leading global technology company. And he's also a management communication social impact professor at NYU Stern School of Business. So his students are very excited to hear how he did in this business planning competition, I'm sure. So thanks, guys. Come on up, and we'd love to hear about crowdfunding.
On this side of the table, I have to admit it, right? So thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you for having us here. It's a huge pleasure. I'm Brian, and this is Jonathan. And you know why we're all here, right? I mean, we're here to increase pro bono. That's what we want. And Jonathan and I think that crowdfunding is both a really exciting and an innovative way to do just that. Let me tell you what I mean. There we go. That's not something my students want to see either. We can do it that way. There we go. That's fine. We're all good here. So I want you to imagine a platform where nonprofits can go, where they have the ability to leverage both the human capital and the financial capital they need to be successful, right? Now, again, the human capital we're talking about is pro bono, right? And we'll get into that in more detail in just a few minutes. But that financial capital comes from crowdfunding, right? So really what we want to do here is empower nonprofits to do something that they've never been able to do quite before. And we're really excited to show that to you today. Thanks, Jonathan. All right, so we know that nonprofits want more pro bono, but we know that there are some limitations. I'm sure people in this room are nodding their heads as well, right? So we want you to meet Bob. He's our executive director of a nonprofit. And Bob has some reasons why he can't do more, right? He has some challenges there. One is that there's a lack of funding for specific programs that typically are more considered program development, internal development, things that we would look for pro bono opportunities to take advantage of. It's also hard sometimes to find the right pro bono consultant or the right pro bono opportunities despite some of the amazing resources that we have out there. And lastly, sometimes the organization's needs don't really fit exactly what they're looking to do. They're trying to find resources that aren't out there, right? And Bob is not alone. So we spoke to a number of nonprofits, and many of them share similar sentiments, right? So here are some of the the key ones. Maybe some of you are in the room right now, so we're excited to have you here. One is, we got this great grant from Taproot, and it was fantastic, but now it was time to move forward and continue on. We didn't know quite how to do that because we didn't have the resources necessary. Sometimes foundations, like we said before, don't donate, or they don't have the capacity to give funding for certain internal projects like, I don't know, program development, staffing, these sorts of things. So that was a challenge. And lastly, we'd love to do more, but we're not quite sure without the proper funding, how are we going to be sustainable in doing this? So major challenges that came up, and we're really excited to address them.
How does our solution address the problem more effectively? We see here that there seems to be a disconnect between all three stakeholder groups, and we would like to bring the financial resources and the human capital aspect of it together more effectively in one solution. And let's take a look at the financial aspect of it. Right now, nonprofits can raise funds, or they can crowdfund on their own website or on all these amazing solutions, but that only addresses one part of the equation. On the service delivery front, because fundraising is not connected to it, the funds don't generally go directly towards capacity building projects, and that's a challenge. And on this slide, as you can see, on the other side of the equation, we have some amazing solutions for nonprofits and pro bono consultants to come together for the service delivery to happen right on those platforms. But again, without the funding aspect of it, sometimes that cannot be done in a sustainable way, and we believe that to be a challenge as well. So what we're proposing here is really one solution that connects resource procurement and service delivery in one platform. And we really want that solution to serve all three stakeholder groups more effectively, to demonstrate impact and to provide accessibility and to really show accountability for all parties involved.
Okay, so how's this actually going to work, right? So I want you to go back to Bob for a minute here, right? Bob is going to go to a platform. Now, it's going to be a crowdfunding platform. We've been speaking a lot with Indiegogo. They've been very helpful giving us advice. So we're going to use Indiegogo's mock-up here as an example, but really it could be any crowdfunding platform. And basically, Bob goes there to get everything he needs to get his campaign set up. So from starting the campaign and understanding how to do a proper campaign, which takes a lot of resources, Bob will be able to get that from this site. But in addition to that, he'll also be able to get things like, how do I know what types of pro bono consultants I should be working with? How's the quality control? Who am I working with here? Even down to what sort of project should I be working on in general, right? So what is an appropriate project for my organization to get involved in? So all of that is here. Now, we used Indiegogo as the example. Indiegogo does not have all that information, so we would plug or connect in some way through either an API or plugin or other technological opportunity to get that information to this site. So it's all in one place. And Bob has the resources he needs to get that campaign successfully started. Once Bob actually gets that campaign started, now it's time for the donors and consultants to be able to connect on that same platform. So picture this, right? So it's crowdfunding, right? So the donors are there and they're looking at different projects and getting excited and putting their money into this. But the consultants also have the opportunity to click on a button. It's hard to see here, but you can click sign up now. Right? So the pro bono consultants get access and the ability to sign up for these opportunities as well. Now, again, quality control. How are we making sure we're getting the right pro bono consultants and so forth? Again, we're going to connect to existing resources to make sure that we're using the right and the most successful programs out there to do what we're trying to do. Now that we've done all of that, it's time for Bob to get his campaign started. He's got his donors excited. He's got his pro bono consultants signed up, and he's working on his actual project, right? So now it's time for Bob to demonstrate some impact and milestones, and he can do that on this platform as well. So here's where he's going to share updates, milestones, and so forth. And again, that's going to connect the donors. They're going to see a side of the nonprofit that they haven't seen before. They really get that. And they can see how successful things are going. The pro bono consultants are feeling more connected. And ultimately, we're rewarding the nonprofits for doing pro bono, which is really what we're trying to do here.
In here, just to show you a little bit of how we see this platform scale and this solution to bring impact to the nonprofit community. I think initially we envisioned this platform to, again, try to integrate with existing technologies, existing solutions. But we'll start out the testing phase pretty slowly to really build up momentum, to really get the best practices and learnings in place to be able to do this more effectively. So we're proposing that we should start with states and cities where pro bono activity is most active right now. Places like New York, San Francisco, Washington D.C., and LA, and then we'll slowly build up momentum from there. And really, what we see is sort of towards the end of the 4th year and the 5th year is when we publicly release the solution to the general public and to really scale up significantly.
So there you have it, folks. So we have talked to a lot of nonprofits, and a lot of surveys went out. The overwhelming majority of people were very excited about this opportunity. We talked to one nonprofit executive director who said, and I quote, maybe you're in the room actually, "I can't wait to go to my board and let them know about this opportunity." So we know this is exciting. We are looking for one platform that leverages both the human capital and the financial capital all in one place in ways that really really empower that nonprofit to do what they haven't been able to do so far as successfully as they'd like to. And we think it's exciting, we think it's innovative, and we think it's going to work. So thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Crowdfunding is obviously a really hot idea these days, and to be able to meld the resource raising with the fundraising, I think is really cool. So same drill here for the audience. Text your questions to 22333, and the code you're going to be using for this team is 795161. All right.
Thanks, guys. Great presentation. Can you clarify, the fundraising is going to happen, where is the money going for the fundraising? I'm a little bit unclear. Are you fundraising, like, for example, if you're doing a website project, is the idea you're bringing in pro bono support and the money that is raised is actually going towards what, if you're not actually paying for the developer?
Yep, definitely, and appreciate you pointing that out. We've thought about a lot of different use cases, and financial challenges can mean a lot of different things when it comes to nonprofits doing a pro bono project. It could go directly into the technology, perhaps server costs, server maintenance cost, or it could go directly towards staff time on the nonprofit side because they do need someone to manage the pro bono projects. So it's really up to nonprofits to assess their needs and figure out the best way to use the funding available to them. But we do intend to provide some initial support and guidance in the training Brian spoke about to really guide them through that process.
As usual, a bunch of good questions from the audience. But one key thing I think would be interesting is, so you're proposing building some of your own tech for this? Is that essentially what
So the ideal situation would be for to partner with existing technologies, and we use Indiegogo as an example. That could be a great place to start. And as I put up in the previous slide, we have crowdfunding platforms out there, and we have pro bono marketplaces out there, and Taproot is building an amazing one. So ideally, we'll be able to find a way to bring the technologies together. That's how we kind of see this executed.
I'm going to build up.
Oh, go ahead.
I've said I'm going to build off one of the questions from the audience, but I agree, as someone who's run their own crowdfunding campaign inside a nonprofit, it can actually be a fair lift. Are you expecting Bob in this case to be managing his own campaign, and or are you giving him any support?
Yep, so we definitely see, in this case, I guess, quote unquote, the platform, whoever is going to be the owner of the solution, to provide some initial support. And that's where sort of the initial testing and learning phase comes in, is to really figure out what nonprofits need to get a successful crowdfunding campaign off the ground. And in your appendix, you will find some numbers and initial projections for how we see staffing on this platform side works. And we do expect to have initially at least a small team of staff members to kind of do a little bit of hand-holding and walk through this process with nonprofits so that they can be successful. But the pilot phase, I would like to reiterate, is going to kind of happen gradually and to build up that momentum.
Right. And to piggyback off that question, I think Bonafide has more of a high-touch solution where you've got fellows being deployed. In this case, you're using a technology platform, so there's certainly opportunity for scale there. I guess the question would be on the other side is how does your solution sort of deal with the mindset on the funding side about capacity building And how do you go about sort of, you should talk about enticing nonprofits to be able to use this. How would you entice the donor community to fund capacity building?
Yep, that's a great question, and thank you for bringing that up, because we've actually spoken with a lot of nonprofits and pro bono consultants and people within the nonprofit community, and they do bring this point up: is why do we need to contribute to a pro bono project? Isn't it free? But when we spoke to nonprofits, we realized that it's really not free. There's staff time that needs to go into it. There's resource production costs that need to go into it. There's implementation costs that need to go into it. So at the end of the day, a nonprofit project doesn't just happen, come out to be a nice looking PowerPoint presentation. So we really need to kind of bring the funding element into it, to give them the financial resources to be able to get those things off the ground.
It's all about the story. We've been hearing that more and more, and so really helping someone like a Bob or whoever it is on Bob's team tell that story, right, will help entice those individual donors as well. And I think that's something that we've heard across the board, and we want to work on that with the resources that we have.
Do you feel like there's an opportunity to get the pro bono volunteer who signs up through the site to actually sort of leverage their networks on that crowdfunding platform? Is that the idea, or is it being driven more by the nonprofit itself?
Yep, definitely, and that's a great point. We definitely would agree with that kind of comment. I think ultimately we really see all three groups kind of work together and goes hand in hand, that for nonprofits, they can build up their own network on the crowdfunding platform. For pro bono consultants, it's not just about doing the work, it's also about building their network and getting their network excited about the work they do with nonprofits, but also getting the donors excited about the impact they can see after a project is completed.
Just to take a couple more questions that we said, as you guys have noted, we're getting a lot of great questions up here, and I want to just say generally we are, they just keep coming, right? Some of them are ideas, but we're keeping track of these questions, so in our follow-up conversations with each of the teams, we're going to be able to go through them with those teams, and again, you guys will have a chance to ask those questions in person later, but so one of the questions was, in thinking about, there have been questions about nonprofits approaching crowdfunding campaigns, and that's hard. Right? So how many nonprofits have actually done crowdfunding campaigns? Can you start with them and then have them incorporate pro bono into this?
Yeah, definitely. And we've actually, and thanks for bringing that up, because we've actually, with the help of Taproot, we're working with 2 nonprofits right now running their own crowdfunding campaigns. And hopefully you guys can take a look. We'll give you that information after the presentation to go up and take a look at those campaigns. And we're very excited about it. I think ultimately, we want to make the process as easy as possible for nonprofits to take advantage of this great resource. And especially when this is a growing field, more and more people are becoming aware of crowdfunding and they're going online to contribute. It's going to be a great resource for them down the line. So in the initial kind of testing phase, the first couple of years is really for us to build up that learning so that they can ultimately take advantage of that resource more effectively.
Excellent. Any other questions from our judges? Okay. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, well, we're going to take sort of a palate cleanser right now in between our heated competition. We'll get to the other 2 teams very quickly, but a side part of this challenge was, knowing that Taproot's almost 50 employees are experts in pro bono. This is what we do every day. Before we kicked off this external challenge, we also kicked off an internal challenge with Taproot employees, which ended up being just fantastic fun. It was fantastically energizing. We got just some really, really crazy, awesome, big ideas from that internal challenge. So what I'm going to do now is introduce the winner of that challenge, or the winning team from that challenge, talk a little bit about their idea. They're obviously not in this competition because they're Taproot employees. They've already won, so we already get to have happy there. This team was called the Duck Savers. They called themselves the Duck Savers because they were targeting a small fictitious nonprofit called Save the Ducks, which I think we would all be hardcore behind, right? And you know, there were a lot of components in this idea, but I think what the judging team liked about this was they were suggesting that nonprofits, rather than having to come up with a fully scoped project, would pose their needs as a challenge, and then pro bono consultants would, you know, approach those needs sort of as a pitch and say, okay, this is how I think I could handle your challenge. And nonprofits, you know, then the nonprofits would get to choose that. So there's a lot of competitiveness in there, which I think really works well in a consultant community, to, you know, just kind of get people a little bit, because we all want to do better at volunteering, damn it. But it, you know, it gets people thinking about, okay, you know, how do I really make my pitch? And it kind of flips the ask on its head, which was a really excellent idea. So these guys came up with a great solution. They won the internal challenge. They also got a monetary award and money for the nonprofit of their choice, which was awesome. And we're thinking about, you know, a couple people have mentioned Taproot's online pro bono marketplace, where we're really trying to set nonprofits up to access resources from a lot of the good you know, a lot of the good channels that exist already. And we've actually taken this idea and used it in our pro bono marketplace. Can we make it so that the pro bono volunteers are actually pitching the nonprofits in a way? So this has been really key to our own development. So that internal challenge, as I said, was just hugely, hugely helpful and a lot of fun. So I'd like to have Liz come up now, actually, and just present the award to that internal team from Taproot. Amy Whitaker, the Senior Associate Consultant in our Advisory Services practice in San Francisco, and Meg Van Wagner, who's the Associate Program Manager for our San Francisco team. And we have a very fun award for them. It's hard to carry. So awesome job, guys. Look at it. It's a turnip. Yeah, it needs a little explaining. So there's a lot of pro bono in this room. Awesome. Seriously, it was an amazing idea, and their presentation was so great. I hope we're getting some good photo ops with that turnip, right? So lots of pro bono in the room. Jack Lau, who's the event coordinator here at LinkedIn, we were talking about awards, and he said, you know, where are you? There you are. So this is the man who created the turnip. He said he was inspired, and he said, you know what? I think I have something that could be a really cool award. And it is a really cool award. He made that thing, and it's awesome. So thank you, Jack. We're going to call you back when we need more root vegetables. It was awesome. So thank you, guys. And now's a good time to mention, too, we also have some other pro bono in the room. The photographer who's wandering around getting great snaps, Brianna Baker, right back there. Thank you so much, Brianna, for what you're doing today. All right, so let's move on to the third of our 4 ideas. This idea is called the Pro Bono Challenge Grant. So it's really food for thought for the funders in the audience today and those who work often with funders. And you know, what if funders could be what if funders could think about offering incentives for best practices such as pro bono? What if they were to offer an incentive on top of a typical grant, perhaps, that they were doing to help nonprofits really think about pro bono as something that's valued by the folks that are supporting them, in addition to, you know, valued internally. So this is the Pro Bono Challenge Grant. Karen McCord is a one-woman team from DC. She's the Senior Director of Strategic Planning at the International Partnership for Microbicides, and I did say that correctly this time. It's a nonprofit dedicated to the development of HIV prevention products for women in the developing world, so hugely important work. She's also, in addition to working on this challenge, currently working as an account director for a Taproot project. So thank you, Karen, for all that you do, and we are looking forward to hearing about the Pro Bono Challenge Grant.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Karen McCord. I'm here to present the Pro Bono Challenge Grant. And this is a cash-based incentive for completing high-quality pro bono projects. And I'm here wearing 2 hats, as you heard from the introduction. I work in a nonprofit, and I do pro bono consulting. So as we heard, there's a supply-demand problem with pro bono engagement, and probably better put is a demand generation problem. We have a supply and a lot of people willing to dedicate their time and effort, but not the requisite time and commitment on the part of nonprofits to take on the work. And so working in a nonprofit, and I can echo this, there's pressing other things that are must-dos, things that come to the top of priority list. So how can we make pro bono come to the top and be at the top and incentivize pro bono work? So sometimes the best solutions are simple and unexpected. And the Pro Bono Challenge Grant is a simple idea. It's to take a cash-based incentive, put it at the end, find a way to pull that resource into the nonprofit. And try and do it in a way that's simple, to award it on top of a traditional grant, not create a new mechanism, try and do it within the fundraising that already happens at the nonprofit. And I think if we take what's desirable, possible, and viable and put those together, we'll have a solution to this problem. And I think nonprofits will do it. And we saw that Taproot helped do a survey. Over 200 nonprofits were surveyed. And to give perspective, about 80% of them had operating budgets of less than $10 million. And they were resounding in their desire to do something like this. 88% said they were somewhat or very likely to apply for a pro bono challenge grant, and 97% said it would increase their level of pro bono activity. So this is the type of hook that we're looking for, something to pull that resource into the nonprofit and increase pro bono work. And with something this strong enthusiasm and the dire need of additional resources, that the nonprofit has the potential for great social impact. So now I'm going to put my pro bono consulting hat on. This is near and dear to work I'm doing right now. It's a real-life example of Life Pieces to Masterpieces. This boy is an apprentice in the program in Washington, D.C. It's situated in an area where only 33% graduate from high school. Life Pieces to Masterpieces has a 100% success rate, and that's in no small part because they teach their children how to transform challenges into opportunities. That's exactly what we're trying to do with the Challenge Grant, is transform this challenge into an opportunity for nonprofits. So Selvin is the executive director at Life Pieces to Masterpieces, and what he would need to do is part of the grant raising, the grant making that he's already doing. He would take on and add a piece that dealt with what he needed to do on a pro bono project. He'd design and propose that, a part of a grant that he's already applying for. And if he was given the go-ahead from the funding source, he would go through, he'd execute that. He'd either use Taproot Online Marketplace or LinkedIn Volunteer Marketplace, help execute on a successful project using the best practices that are provided by those resources. And when he finished that project, he'd have that cash reward at the end. So key to the success is finding that forward-thinking and innovative funder willing to make this work. We spoke to people engaged in the philanthropic community, folks like social venture partners who thought this was a great idea, and those that are invested in the health of the nonprofit sector would be the ones that see the high impact and the potential for impact in the social sector. So what we also heard in having those conversations is that there's no one size that fits all. And so this is an adaptable model for different funding sources. So not trying to create a new program, but trying to fit in the models that are already working, that are already executing and giving dollars out to nonprofits. And so the idea is to keep it simple, because what we don't want to do is, in taking away a hurdle, is add another one. We want to find a way to make this happen and have that demand generation and pull the nonprofit and the resources to help complete these projects. So we heard this was innovative and that it's not been tried before. So in order to test this idea, we designed a pilot. We went back again to the survey information and we tried to look at what would gain someone's attention, what would make this worthwhile. And over 60% of those surveyed in the nonprofit said they would need a cash bonus of about $7,500. So if we were to design a program to start this, we would take 10 grants of $7,500 each, and take $75,000 as part of this program, allocate $25,000 for implementation and an evaluation partner, and we would use $100,000 to test this. And this is what the impact we think it would be. In year one, So just conservatively estimating the value of those pro bono projects is $50,000 per project. That's something that we know, and it's a conservative value for working with Taproot and what they typically value their service grants for. So 10 of those projects is $500,000, and with an investment of $100,000, that's a 400% rate of return on this program. And so if we look at what was done in 2013, just foundation and corporate giving, they put $66 billion into the nonprofit sector. If we were to take just a small portion and design challenge grants, we could look at generating and unleashing $1.3 billion in value. So I want to thank you for allowing me to present the Pro Bono Challenge Grant today. I think everyone in this room has the same goal, and I think together we can find a way to solve the supply-demand problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I think probably many of us have wished we could change the way funding works in some ways at different times, and I think this is a really interesting way to do it. And I'd say 1.3 billion in value is a pretty good goal to aim for. So you guys know the drill at this point, 22333. The code here is 795-200.
I think one analogy is there are funders out there who will fund development staff because that is so impactful. You know, it's a $100,000 grant and they go out, hire someone who can then raise $1 million. Have you talked to those funders whether or not they would be interested in leveraging a similar kind of grant for volunteer resources?
Not during the research phase, but I think it's a really good idea to do to see if this would make sense.
Yeah, I think it's actually really clever to work on the demand side. I mean, obviously, money talks. And so when you've got a grant maker that's making that a condition, that's one way to drive it. So I get where the forward-thinking foundations might do it because it seems innovative, something new. But if I were, kind of another grant maker, what would you pitch sort of as the value proposition to me as the funder? Why is this, how does this meet a need that I might have?
Right, sure, a better bang for the buck. And what we also often see is that there's a lot of pressure on nonprofits to keep their general operating costs low. And a lot of times what we're seeing, the pro bono projects are helping that side of the business. And so one way is to think about the dollars that are given to the nonprofit can go towards program while allowing the pro bono to help the general operating funds. And really from that side, they've got a bigger bang for the buck in terms of that value that's going to the nonprofit.
Hi. Many organizations would like to see funding change or funders change so that they are actually supporting overhead costs in a different way. Yes. And does this become an impediment to that progression? And if so, what would you say to respond to that?
A very good question, and hopefully not. Hopefully it can be something that's supportive and integrative to try and find ways to just leverage value. I think with such an untapped resource on the pro bono side, hopefully it's just something that can be synergistic with supporting the capacity building on the nonprofit side.
I'm going to build off a question. What happened? Great question.
I don't have my phone on me. I didn't do it.
Were you texting under the lectern there? So I get what the question. Oh, it seems to have disappeared from the screen. But the question was about does it go hand in hand with a grant application? And I'd love to hear more about what are the parameters of the grant, the types of grants that you think would be able to leverage this, and then building off of another question, which is how involved does the grantor have to stay, and what are the triggers to actually, where do they see success, or is it that check the box, the project has been done, and then how do you think about pro bono being impactful or not?
Yeah, sure. I'll start with your last question. I think Taproot's a great example of how the monitoring and evaluation happens, and I think it absolutely would have to have a deliverable at the end in order to see that it's successful. Hopefully not too complicated, and hopefully this is incentive-based as opposed to a penalty, so an add-on to a grant that's already being written. So, write your grant, but then if you could add this piece on, we're going to give you this extra bit and have the deliverable-based piece for success at the end. And sorry, the first part of the question was
just what are the parameters? What types of grants do you see this being attached to?
Yeah, sure. Hopefully, it could be again, the adaptability is to try and make it work across any type of grant, and even corporate, any way to make it work, because I think that's key to a program like this.
Where do you give a little bit more color to how you get to the $7,500 would incentivize 60% of the nonprofits? What does that stat actually mean?
That came from the survey that was done. Nonprofits were asked what it would take for them to apply for pro bono. They were given a range of dollar values, and that was the one that was more than a majority would be willing to go and do it. I do think that's also probably a scalable number. You're looking at a set of nonprofits that were in the $10 million or less, so I think there's probably a bit of scale that would happen on something like that.
All right, so one of the questions I saw pop up, which was really interesting, was how do you ensure that nonprofits are using this opportunity to do really high quality pro bono work rather than just doing pro bono work just to get some extra grant money?
Yeah, I think that would be as part of it be incumbent upon the granting organization to have some level of monitoring and evaluation, some type of, and again, I think Taproot is an example of how it's not just check the box. There's actually some type of surveying, some type of look at the deliverable and make sure it's high quality. I think that's a very important part of the monitoring evaluation, but not to be too cumbersome, but something that would already be happening as part of the grant, closing out a grant, writing your final report, showing the deliverable as part of the reporting to the granting agency.
Great. And then I see another good question up here. Would there be a larger education or preparation effort to enable organizations to make the case and make effective asks? I think I think this question is getting at upstream marketing. Can nonprofits start making this ask themselves as they're making asks for other grant money? What do you think about that?
Yeah, sure. Good question, and I think it is important. I think it would have to be part of the program. I think again, Taproot's a great example of how there is work that goes into making sure the nonprofit's ready to take on and create a good ask.
So how do you make this happen? I mean, what's the first step? And it sounds like you've talked to a few foundations or grantors. What kind of collective movement do you have to get to really make this viable?
Sure. I think if there is a socially innovative funder out there, maybe you're in the room, I don't know, is somebody who's willing to put a program out there and actually give it a try and show some results, show that in the end, after a year of putting a program out there, I think you could partner with Taproot as a way of also executing on the pro bono, because there you've already got that ready field of pro bono consultants. So I think it's a matter of working with one or two funders willing to give it a shot and see if that actually helps pull more nonprofits into going forward with it.
Excellent. All right.
Great.
Thank you, Karen. That was wonderful. Okay. Moving on to our last of the four. This idea is called the Pro Bono Help Desk, which makes it sound really easy, which we like. And this team approached the question by saying, what's a big area of need for nonprofits? How many times do you know a nonprofit employee who said, God, I need some help with my website? Actually, let's rewind and widen that. How many times do you know a human who has said, I really need some help with my website or some help with this tech tool? So these guys really focused on that area, which I think was really interesting. So we're looking forward to hearing more about their idea. This is from a DC-based team, all former Ashoka employees. So they've been supporting social entrepreneurs for a while. They're no longer at Ashoka, but they kept in touch, got back in touch for this project and came up with a really powerhouse idea. So please welcome Yasser Ahmed, Kulsum Khan, and Greg Schnippel. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. We are Team Pro Bono Help Desk. I am Yasser Ahmed. I'm joined with Greg Schnippel and Kulsum Khan. So, as was mentioned, we know each other from years ago at Ashoka, where we help social entrepreneurs scale their ideas in the social sector. So since then, we've been able to keep in touch, and we continue to stay engaged in the nonprofit sector through various organizations, including Taproot. So our mission is to help nonprofits make the best of their website and online presence. So why are we focusing on websites? Because the data shows that not only do websites view this as the most important form of engagement, but that it often ends up being seen by more people than any other channel combined. And so, however, but in our experiences in the nonprofit sector and also Taproot survey, we found that many nonprofits face multiple issues that prevent them from effectively using their websites as a positive outreach medium. And so to delve deeper into this problem, we interviewed a number of organizations that range in size, issue areas of focus, locations and budgets. And we found that, that a lot of the nonprofits had responded with a range of issues, but really we found that they had two core needs. First, that they wanted help with fixing existing problems with their website, and then also they needed help with making their website more effective for their work. Also, we found that there were some core underlying concerns. First of all, that most nonprofits don't have the resources to hire full-time technical staff. Also, they don't have the human capital to be able to manage large-scale pro bono projects with external partners. So given these constraints combined with the fact that most of the people that take on these pro bono projects are not trained as technical volunteers, it takes these nonprofits a huge amount of time to frame the right questions to ask and to also search for the appropriate answers online.
Technical volunteers, on the other hand, are interested in making meaningful contributions to nonprofits working on issues that are of interest to them. However, many of the volunteers that we interviewed expressed a concern about long-term commitments to pro bono projects, and they were also not clear about how this would benefit them in their own careers. So they would be interested in shorter-term engagements, but but they're not clear on how to access or to find them. We saw that the problems for nonprofits and pro bono volunteers align on two similar themes: lacking time and resources for committing to long-term pro bono engagements. So overstretched nonprofit employees don't have the time to search for user-friendly resources for quick technical questions, while technical volunteers find the process of looking for short, well-framed questions by nonprofits to be too lengthy. And neither of them has the time or the resources to really commit to long-term pro bono engagements.
So therefore, our idea is to empower nonprofits to be able to ask technical questions to a community of volunteers and view the responses to these questions from their own website. Our idea breaks down into two parts, essentially: the technical community and the plugin that will enable the nonprofits to connect to it. So let's start with the technical community. For the technical community, we're taking our inspiration from the popular Stack Overflow, Stack Exchange websites, which are invaluable to IT workers because they provide an efficient way to find crowdsourced, authoritative solutions to technical questions that have been selected by their peers, which is exactly the same kind of experience we're trying to get for nonprofits. The model for these kinds of websites is pretty simple. You have an ability to ask a question. Other users can then refine the question, maybe ask details, more specific information. They can then provide answers, multiple answers, which the other users can then select or rate. And all of these actions combine to form a reputation score. So we want to create this technical community based on this model and then create a plugin that allows the nonprofits to connect to it. So the plugin would be for the popular open source softwares that they're using already to power their websites, like Joomla, WordPress, and Drupal. To give an example of how we would do this, let me tell you a story about a group that we worked with as part of this project, Miriam's Kitchen. A few years back, I helped them launch and develop this new website for them, and I hadn't heard from them until I contacted them about this project. When I did, they were kind of endearingly reluctant to share with me a list of questions they had about the website and things that they were stuck on and had been stuck on for months, which were pretty simple questions. With the plugin model, they would be able to ask these questions from their own website. And this is an example of the kind of simple questions that they're trying to get resolution on. They would then be able to view the answers directly in their website and communicate with the people that are asking these questions. They would also be able to search a database of existing questions and answers that maybe other nonprofits have asked to perhaps maybe preemptively solve their own problems. And finally, because the plugin is integrated within their own platform, it would be able to diagnose issues that are occurring with their website and perhaps suggest questions that they should be asking to the community to get resolution.
So we believe our model works for all stakeholders. Technical volunteers save time by focusing on questions that correlate to their areas of interest and expertise. A model similar to Stack Overflow that has a voting system ensures quality control and at the same time allows people with the best answers to build their reputations in the community and their personal businesses. And finally, it acts as a learning space for all those involved in the interactions.
And nonprofits, they benefit from the user-centered design of the platform by receiving quality responses to their questions from a wide pool of technical volunteers. So just as the technical volunteers, they benefit from the kind of user experience of eco-learning, the nonprofits also benefit from a system, from a life cycle of support as they attain necessary expertise through Pro Bono Help Desk.
In conclusion, we just had the last slide. In conclusion, we view combining the power of the nonprofit help desk with the simplicity of the the power of the wisdom of crowds that comes from the technical community with the simplicity of the plugin will enable these nonprofits to get through their solutions. And we can scale as quickly and as fast as we can sign up nonprofits and volunteers. Thank you very much.
You're ready to go, Dave. Big question. I'll let you get to it.
I could use this. But, so the question is, I mean, how do you differentiate from Stack Overflow and the other support forms that are already out there? And then how would you go about sort of building a unique user community, both on the nonprofit side as well as your volunteers? Because there's a lot of sites out there. So just curious, how do you get to make this unique?
Absolutely. We think one of the issues not issues, I mean, the Stack Overflow communities are very valuable for the IT community, but for the pro bono, for the nonprofit community, they're going to have a lot more specific needs. And in the Stack Exchange, these systems, there's maybe a penalty if you ask the same question, or if you ask a question that's too specific to your website or your specific circumstance. In this model, we would not penalize for that. We want them to be able to ask a question about their specific homepage. And we want them to be able to feel free to ask those kinds of questions. Maybe they've already been answered. Maybe we can continue to build on a common answer that would be useful to everyone else.
And what's your route to market? Do you partner with a large organization that could give some visibility to you, or how do you sort of break through everything that's out there and make this land on a nonprofit's?
Absolutely. Well, in one aspect, the questions that they're answering, unless there's something very specific or possibly security damaging, would be public. So a lot of, we would just rely on Google traffic for a lot of the tech volunteers that are technical workers that are already looking for answers to these questions that maybe a nonprofit is also looking for. So they might stumble across these and find a way to answer it as well. In addition, we would use the existing kind of marketplaces like LinkedIn Marketplace or the Taproot Marketplace to suggest if you're looking for an opportunity, Miriam's Kitchen, our Global Fund for Children, is looking for people to answer a series of technical questions on their website right now. You can go there and answer the questions that they have that are occurring.
I have a question around the emotional experience of the volunteer. And is this a satisfying experience for them? Like, are you worried about it almost being too anonymous or too easy? Like, how do they feel the gratification of this being a volunteer experience?
Sure, I'm very interested in the idea that this might be more gratifying than Stack Exchange or Stack Overflow, which they're already technical IT workers, web developers are already using and taking part in because it's actually connected to a nonprofit. In the Stack Exchange, Stack Overflow model, there's no real identification of who the user is. It's not that important, or that the user that's asking the question. But in this case, you can find out that it's Global Fund for Children. You can find out what Global Fund for Children's mission is, and you can see the other questions that they're asking, and perhaps you'll get engaged to help them out. I'd also say, as an IT worker, I sometimes find this model of just give me your list of questions, give me your ticket, and I can address it very quickly. Let me understand exactly what you need. And so in that way, at the end of the year or at the end of a period, I can see how many tickets or solutions I've resolved for a number of organizations across for different goals, themes.
You mentioned that it's a quick way to get answers, but what is the typical turnaround time from the time someone posts on one of these sites to the time that you actually are not only getting people to respond, but bubbling up the most high quality answer? And is there a chance that there may not be answers and that someone could sit on this for months without a response?
Fair question. I've found in the Stack Overflow universe that questions usually get picked up very quickly. The gamification aspect of the reputation score means there's an incentive for people to quickly get out there and kind of provide an answer as quickly as possible and increase their reputation score. I use these quite frequently and find that incentive myself. I'm looking kind of for those questions that I can answer really quickly and get an answer to. If there are longer questions that need more work, that would, through the community rules and the community process, we can maybe help them divide it up into smaller questions or figure out a better resources to help them find it.
Again, a lot of good questions on the from the audience and group. Let's see. So, and a strong +1 really you have to get the critical mass to get the exact parallel with Stack Overflow. Now, given that Stack Overflow's architecture is fundamentally to do end sites themselves, right? Legal, IT, etc. What would be the if there was, would this be a valuable strategy, or what would be the problem with the strategy is simply to go to Stack Overflow and say, will you do +1 site and try to make the +1 site versus doing the tech yourself?
Absolutely. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to us. I guess we'd have to see if that's a strategy viable to Stack Exchange. I think that one issue with it may be the API, the plugin that connects back and forth to Stack Exchange. We want to, right now, they have an incentive to not let users flood the system with a lot of questions. And we need to make sure that that model is different for this site, because nonprofits will have a lot of questions, and they may all be related to one issue with fonts, but we kind of need to let them have that experience.
I just want to say I like the comment up there about why not just have this on TechSoup.
There it is again.
Partners come up through there. So, but I think you guys, did answer why a specific community for this might be very helpful. Is there a path? A couple of people have asked: is there a path to longer-term engagements with volunteers who, is there any follow-up, or sort of to Patrice's question, is there a way to connect people beyond just okay, I answered this question, and then like a fish in the sea, it's gone?
Yes, the volunteers can. One aspect of the model is in the Stack Exchange, Stack Overflow sites. You don't get to follow a user. You don't necessarily, but in our idea, we would want to at least be able to, let's say, follow an organization, or maybe I want to adopt an organization and get an email whenever an organization posts a question. And this way I can form kind of a long-term engagement with the organization. And definitely, we don't want to preclude the opportunity for, if someone is answering a lot of questions and if the nonprofit sees that there's a user that's really being helpful, that they could reach out to them and say, look, we're thinking about doing a website rebuild. Would you be interested in this long-term project? That should be allowable within the site to allow those kind of long-term projects to occur.
Questions that we're repeating up here, which I think is a good one, about can you really start aggregating the questions and the answers, and is there sort of some kind of sub-site or place that would be a separate resource for nonprofits to go and just check the answers directly?
Absolutely, and over time, I'm sure we would get like a lot of the same questions, like what is the best constituent relationship management tool for my site, and does anyone have any recommendations? And we would like to aggregate these into kind of a guide as a dialogue, where the nonprofit could go to this site and they could say, I need a website. Okay, do you have a domain name? No, I do not have a domain name. Okay. Here are a few questions related to how you get a domain name. Okay, I have a domain name, but I need a host. Okay, here's a few questions already answered related to what you need to get. And so in this way, we can kind of answer that longer term question of how do I build a really big project, or how do I handle a really big web development project, by breaking it into bite-sized chunks for the organization.
What's the back end management that's needed to really do all these things that you're talking about? I mean, it sounds like, there's a piece that's a technology build, but from what you were just saying, there's also sort of a human piece that needs to be really almost like a concierge service and collating these answers.
Absolutely. So the back end, there are existing Drupal and I believe WordPress distributions that already mimic this model of a question answer system where users can vote and relate and pick answers. The kind of concierge, the curated list, would have to be more human driven, and that's what we're kind of accounting for in our budget. That we know that initially we're going to have to scale and market to get enough interest in both nonprofit volunteer organizations and in technical volunteers to get that to work. And part of that in the end game would be someone that can curate these answers.
One of the questions that was up there a minute ago was, you're kind of considering whether you might partner or build something like this. Have you thought about, a smaller scale prototype? How might you go about sort of testing that, just to see, if this is a viable?
We were already able. In the course of this project for research, we were able to stand up one of these distributions and use it to kind of answer questions. And I engaged Miriam's Kitchen to kind of, not the API model, that's still the plugin from their site, but they were able to go in, set up a question, and see the kind of process and see whether they like that or not as a way to answer their kind of smaller questions, the things that are keeping them from moving to the next step in their website.
All right. Excellent. Well, we did get to a lot of the questions on the board, but there are a lot more there, so we'll be sure to discuss those with you later. But thank you for a great presentation. All righty. So we've got 4 great ideas. Judges, I don't envy you your conversation now. Remember, you're picking 2 winners. I think Suzanne is going to be taking you to the Superman room. I just like saying that. Superman room. No capes involved. So yeah, head on out and have fun with that. Our teams are waiting. They're biting their nails. And they're ready to go.
So we actually had a extended and a highly detailed conversation. The usual pattern, this kind of the position is, and what I'm opening is, it was very difficult to make decisions, and in this case, it's true. One of the things I was thinking about internally was kind of if I could fuse them all into one lump, I'd be pretty happy. There were a lot of very good things. There's also, by the way, and I think the questions that were coming up in mobile were really good, and I would take those seriously. I think we opted not to repeat too many of them because we were trying to get the breadth of them for the ideas. The thinking about which of these things should be the 2 winners, and the other 2 also winners. Because everything was valuable, one of the things that I decided to do is I'll kick in $2,500 to the nonprofits for the 2 who are not in the winning set, because I think it's an important thing, and you guys being here, valuable. And so with that, we are gonna talk about all 4 and give a little bit of insight and perspective on the discussion. It's a little awkward to talk about them before we announce what it actually is. So we're going to start with announcing the ones who are the 2 who have won, in addition to the others. And so, I'll start with the challenge grant, right? So, and we won't go into depth yet because we're going to each judge is going to go into some depth in each one. And then bona fide. But very truthfully, we love you all, which is one of the reasons, like, everyone is in fact a winner, and so I am doing my very, very small part to help make that true. And with that, who wants?
Oh, sure. All right, great. So, So Karen, congratulations on that. Really like the idea a lot. I think as with all the ideas, I think these are prototypes, right? So you've had 6 weeks, I think, to put this together. So obviously we actually discussed on all these some areas where you could iterate some and do some additional work too. And I'm happy to talk to you about that in more detail offline too. But we think this is really a big idea. It's really interesting. And I think the whole idea is how do you, we talked a lot about how do you build a movement around this ultimately. That drove a lot of our decision making along all the solutions. Is ultimately our goal is to really incentivize people to match and meet up, to connect sort of the needs with the resources. And I think this is an interesting play that you have in sort of tapping the funder community, and because ultimately nonprofits respond to the funder community. So I think it's an interesting idea. There's some questions that we can talk a little bit about sort of, how do you actually connect and engage with funders in a way that they see this as valuable? How do we avoid putting additional overhead on nonprofits, or nonprofits might just apply for it for the sake of meeting pretzeling to meet a funder's need as opposed to something that's really meaningful and so forth. But we think it's a really interesting idea. And my other hat, beyond Smallify, is I'm with the Wesley Foundation, so I'd be happy to prototype with you, and we can talk about that too. So I think it's a really interesting idea. All right, thanks.
And similarly, we were really impressed with Bonafide, your big idea. It's really talking about how do we make pro bono volunteering a movement. We really like the fact that it was creating capacity, long-term capacity within the organizations, and that it could be really broadly applied, and that organizations could get help with marketing, PR, website, program, whatever it is. The couple of tweaks that we thought we would talk about with you in a later point also as well is maybe perhaps to make it scalable. Instead of having younger people focus on older retirees who have the set of skills, who can do recruiting, who can do speccing of the product, who can do that project management to make that financial model more viable. But we really liked, I think, kind of the challenges that you identified, who can identify organizational needs, who can find and recruit pro bono volunteers, and who will actually manage the project. So congratulations.
Great. And crowdfunding for pro bono. Again, really, what?
Yeah, we got our wires.
Oh, sorry. We got our wires crossed. What am I doing?
I can do the other one. Yeah.
No, I'll sorry. I'll do the other one.
We'll do them together.
Let's do them together. Okay, I will do what else? Oh, Pro Bono Help Desk. This was actually a really tough call for us, honestly. We think that you guys had some really terrific ideas, and we think that it's definitely a project that is doable in a significant way and could have a really significant impact on nonprofits. What we were struggling with, a couple of things, is what came up in part of the questioning was the build it or partner with someone else. We do think that there's probably opportunities to partner with someone else and to really make this scalable. And we also think that you may want to think about moving it, or at least when you talk about it, moving it beyond just website. And part of this challenge was really to build the movement and try to lead the movement forward and try to encourage as many nonprofits as possible to really access high quality pro bono. And so while we thought that there was absolutely a need for this, very, very specific task, I would encourage you to think about how do you take this as kind of a pilot and then move it beyond website design to think about other things, whether it's marketing or quick HR questions or whatever that is, to really build a community of kind of crowdsourced ideas. And so we love the idea. We would highly encourage you guys to continue to pursue it, and those are kind of the tweaks that we were talking about. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'll just a note to jump on there is just how we want this to be connected to the movement. I think there is potential, but it would take a real intentionality around the design and this experience for the volunteers. And you guys could get there, but it's definitely something to consider. Then crowdfunding for pro bono, Jonathan and Brian. We we all loved the idea and the consideration you gave to the fact that you need funding for these projects too. And that's such an important component of it. And the idea of crowdfunding for that is pretty compelling. I think the things that held us back a bit were just that we'd love to see you leverage the technology that already exists. Like, how are you partnering with Indiegogo or Kickstarter? And then also being pretty considerate about the burden this puts on the nonprofit to still run this challenge. And how do you get that expertise to live inside the nonprofit? All of those things could be solved, but it seems like those are just right now like the tweaks that kept us back from pushing these two forward. So thanks, everyone. This was a fantastic opportunity. Yeah.
Great work.
Great work, everybody.
And before Alethea closes us out, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Alethea and her team. We've got a lot of roots, as we call them, in the room, and maybe you can just raise your hand because you've really done a terrific job of spearheading this challenge all the way through. So a big thank you, and thank you again, of course, to Reed and to Meg.
Yeah, this is wonderful. So much fun, and what was most fun was watching the minutes tick by when you guys went over your deliberation time, and we knew something fun was going on in there. So thank you, Reed, for your very generous contribution to the teams that didn't win. I think that's really important, and it's going to help them give back to nonprofits in their community. We also have a bag full of social entrepreneurship fun for everybody, for all of our contestants. It starts with tissue paper, as all good things do. But then our judges picked out some books that they thought, on social entrepreneurship and business that they thought would be useful for you guys. One of the first is Reed's new book, The Alliance. That's in here, which is good. There's a lot of my favorites in here, actually. Little Bets by Peter Sims, and Thinking Fast and Slow. I think this was Patrice's contribution. So really good stuff in here, and I hope you guys will have fun with that. I promised bonus gifts for everyone at the start of the show. It's not tissue paper, but General Assembly. Who's familiar with General Assembly? So they're an organization that works to nourish social entrepreneurship by giving people the skills they need, technical skills, business skills, and so on. And what I love, I've taken a number of General Assembly courses, and what I love about them is their approach to community, and how they really like to bring the community into their space, and they're really helping think about the outcomes for the people who take their classes. General Assembly has offered to give everyone in the room, so everyone who came today, a $200 credit on a part-time course or a $500 credit on a full-time course, which is awesome, as well as for the winners, a $3,000 scholarship for any of the courses that they have that you can apply for. So thank you to General Assembly for that. That was a nice bonus, right? A good bonus gift. So if you're not familiar with General Assembly, definitely check them out, because it's well worth using that. So yeah, just big thank yous to everyone. This was a lot of fun. So many good ideas. Thank you to our judges. And yeah, feel free to stick around. We're going to have some refreshments. And of course, we have our innovative folks over here. And I think there were a lot of questions coming up. So we can have a lot of good conversation. And yeah, oh yeah, we need that. Sorry. I almost forgot the presentation. This is like our check moment, Woohoo!